Want to thank our sponsors before we get started. Thank you for finding us on another edition of No Stoplights. Want to thank our sponsors, Francis Marion University, Carolina Bank, Micky Finn's, Victor's, Marlboro MPD Electric Co-op, McCall Farms, Pepsi of Florence, PLC Commercial Real Estate, and McLeod Health. If you like what we do here, and I want to tell you our objective. I mean, this is our goal. We have established ourselves in the genre of conservative talk radio. I decided to embark upon an endeavor of my own, and it's not an extension of conservative talk radio. I enjoy that. I'm not at all bothered by giving aggressive opinions. I'm not bothered at all by being considered somewhat controversial or a lightning rod. I believe in what I believe in. I respect those who have fundamental disagreements. I try to engage civilly and respectfully in those that disagree. But I felt in the last 10 or 12 years that our community lacked someone discussing the issues relevant and pertinent to the area, the region, and America at large. The internet is very impersonal. It's effective. It's taken over the media. Barack Obama was asked once what keeps him up at night, and he said the decentralization. He actually said the proliferation of media. What he means is not being able to control the media. But that's a story for conservative talk radio, not this podcast. But we are in the process. Dave Baker and I are in the process, with the sponsors' help, of establishing a genuine media outlet that is going to eventually, we hope and pray, turn into somewhat of a weekly, I don't want to say television show, a internet attempt to recreate some of the local flavor of television of days gone by. I'm not nostalgic. I accept change. I don't begrudge change. There's a reason we're doing a podcast and not buying time on the television or radio. But I want to make clear to our subscribers and our loyal supporters that we're not where we're trying to get. We're in the process of building a permanent studio in downtown Florence. We'll announce that here sooner than later. We're in the process of kind of aligning ourselves with a website. We're working with some other mutually interested partners in our area. But eventually, we'd like to get to a place where it's all about the region. Well, let me back up. The state, the region, and then the locale. I mean, I'm going to talk a lot today about national politics, and I'll tell you the reason that national politics matters is we're in the short rows of a very crucial presidential campaign. So I'm going to not talk about local politics or state politics or the region itself. We're going to talk today about the presidential campaign and how I perceive that as we see it. But I want to go back to these sponsors, because these sponsors have all been critically important to the advancement of our community. One thing these sponsors agree with is we don't have the ability to go somewhere and be updated or brought up to speed with what's happening in this area. That's where we aspire to be. It's a work in progress. It takes longer than I ever imagined it would. You've got to build some sort of infrastructure. I'm a bit green at this. I think we built some credibility in the world of conservative talk radio. This is a different animal. We did a period of time where we found some business leaders locally who had made an impact on the community. We'll do a lot more of that. We'll have some back and forth with political figures, statewide, regional, and local. But we're not where we aspire to be. We're on a journey trying to get there. And I'm going to level with you. I don't have with complete clarity what the finished product looks like. But right now, we're in the middle of a very consequential presidential campaign that the majority of you are I don't want to say, not like me. You're not entrapped by it. You're not just waking up every day wondering about it. It's my job to be consumed by it. It's my job to know more about it than you do. But I wanted with clarity to explain to those who have allowed this to be a part of their digital experience that we're not where we need to be. We're not exactly sure where we're trying to get, but we've kind of got it nailed down in principle and in theory. And as we progress, get our new studio, our permanent studio. There'll be some clarity. There'll be once again kind of working in conjunction with a website, A couple of other media outlets in the area have inquired about our interest in collaborating on some of these things. I'm not begrudging the beach. I get it. I mean, every damn body and their brother moved to the beach 20 years ago, and I'm convinced they're going to move the Michigan-Ohio State football game to Coastal Carolina Stadium so all the retirees won't have to drive back to Ann Arbor or the Horseshoe in Columbus. But I mean, a lot of the media left to go there. And I understand that the market's bigger. It's all about the bottom line. We're all, to some degree, capitalist. But I want to recreate some energy in media in this area, and I'm crazy enough to believe that we can do it over a period of time. I gave you fair warning that this is not an attempt to be local or regional or talking about the school board, city government, county government. We're going to do a lot of that, and they won't like some of the things we say. I've got no interest in busting somebody in the chops. I got no interest in being Dan Rather of 60 Minutes, but we do have an interest in trying to advance our community from a public and private perspective, and we'll get to that as time progresses. I communicate frequently with our sponsors about what our intent is and where we're trying to get. There's an old Chinese proverb, or parable, I guess, would be better. This farmer toiled over his crops year after year after year after year. And one year, something unfortunate happened. One of his horses got out. It was a very important part of his farming operation. And the natives of the village came to the farmer. He was a very respected man of the village and said, such a tragedy that you have established yourself as one of the more prominent toilers of the land, having this farming operation, and now you don't have a horse. We can help, but we don't have a horse to loan you because, people just didn't have a lot of excess. And the farmer famously answered, we'll see. 2 days later, the horse shows back up with a kind of an entourage of horses. His horse brings back about 3 or 4 wild horses. The village came to the farmer and said, wow, bad luck 2 days ago, really good luck today. Not only did your old dependable horse that you rely upon so much show back up, but 2 came back with it. What good luck you have? We'll see, was his answer. The farmer commissioned his son to try and break one of the more stable horses, or horses he thought would be more of an asset to the farming operation. The farmer's son gets on the horse. The horse throws the son falls at a bad angle, breaks his leg. The village comes to visit the farmer and says, wow, I mean, what a roller coaster you're on. Bad luck, your horse breaks out, gets away. Good luck, he comes back with horses in tow. Now you got more bad luck because the son that you depend on to do a lot of the farming work has a broken leg. Farmer says, we'll see. About a week later, the military of the country the farmer's village is located in comb the countryside for willing and able souls because they have entered into a military conflict. They pick about every young able man from the village except the farmer's kid. Farmer's kid's got a broke leg. He's got a cast on his leg. The people left in the village say, wow, what wonderful luck you had for them to come and almost enlist every young able-bodied man, but not your kid. Farmer answered, guess what? We'll see. So when I give these projections or opinions, I certainly don't call them predictions, about what I think will happen in the 2020 presidential election, remember the old Chinese parable, we'll see. I don't know what's about to happen over the next 80 some odd days, but I have reason to believe that these are some of the things we pay close attention to. There's kind of a competing argument. I mean, it's subconscious, I would imagine, in most of us, and it's probably dominated by the emotional side of the brain. In my world, because I've run for office and I study politics and I get paid a decent wager or a decent wage to talk and pontificate on politics, but you've got this emotional side of the brain that says this. And then you've got the practical side of the brain that kind of contradicts or balances what the emotions say. I've often said if people were Vulcans, we'd be a lot more predictable, but half the stuff in the world wouldn't have been invented. A lot of things we benefit from made no sense when the time was tried to make it part of our daily lives. So the emotions of the campaign. Let's go down this road for a second. The emotions of the campaign today are obviously fundamentally different than they were when Donald Trump was running against Joe Biden. There's no denying that. Energy, enthusiasm, excitement, momentum, all of that. I don't want to say prey upon the emotional side of the brain, but they begin to create a scenario or outcome that is not based in reason. We are a deeply, deeply divided nation. I look at polls. I look at statistics. I read Pew Research about twice a week, some of the socioeconomic underpinnings of the country, some of the big debates we're having, some of the mass migration from one place to another. I mean, all these go into, the devil's brew of American politics. But when you really allow your emotions to get the best of you, when the assassination attempt of Donald Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania back in June, when that happened, the emotional side of the brain and about all of us said, there's no way you beat Trump. I mean, there's just no way. Biden's old and feeble. The Republicans have a lot of energy. Yeah, they got internal squabbles, never Trumpers, those who just find him unsuitable and too crass and irreverent. But my God, he stands up, he pumps his fist, fight. Elon Musk gets on board. I think Mark Zuckerberg called and apologized to Trump for censoring the picture or visual of Trump with his fist in the air, defiantly yelling, fight. There is no way in hell Trump loses that election, except it's June. We vote in November. There's early voting that'll happen sooner than that. But the emotional side of the brain, you go to bed that night as a Democrat, very discouraged, very despondent, very downtrodden. There's no way we can beat that guy. We don't think he's, we think he's too different, too unique, too unqualified, but we're not going to beat him. The Republicans emotionally said, they're right. We got to be careful, but there's no way we lose. And then we have a debate, and we have an enormous debacle. We have Joe Biden fail miserably to appear coherent. The man, I think you, if you come from where I come from, one of the characteristics you admire in human beings is their respect of elders. So I don't want to say nasty things about Joe Biden, but it's obvious that he is unqualified cognitively to do the job of president of the United States. There are a lot of things you got to do when you're president of the U.S., for leader of the free world, and he does not have the mental ability or stability right now to do the job. Never will have it again. It's a little bit sad from a humanistic perspective. Was it a coup? Was it an overthrow? Was it fair to the Democrat base? If I could argue a lot of points of view there. Emotionally, you knew that Biden was not going to survive. There's just no way Biden survives. So fight in the most defiant way imaginable, combined with Biden looking so out of sorts, so unqualified to ask voters in America to consider him to be president again. And you can close the book. This election is over. I had friends of mine, very smart friends. This is over. If you love Trump, good. If you don't like Trump, not so good. But then Biden decides, I'm not going to get into the detail about what I think happened, but Biden was forced. We'll say that. Biden was forced to make a decision that he said he didn't want to make. And it gets out of the way, and Kamala Harris becomes the Democrat nominee, and excitement swings from this side to that side. Emotions. We're talking about emotions here. The emotions of the political world shifted. Trump struggled a bit and has struggled a good bit to adjust whatever they had prepared for in Biden didn't apply to Harris. They had to come up with a new set of how to get their message across against a much younger and multi-ethnic candidate. I've offered some advice to folks who want to win and understand Republican politics. I think you call her a San Francisco radical. You don't concern yourself as to whether she's an Indian American or an Asian American or a Black American. She's a San Francisco radical. But once again, we got all these emotions kicking in. I got about 8 or 10 Democrats, friends of mine. 4 hold office. They're good buddies. They're good people. They're just wrong on the Democrat, on the politics side of it. And they think I'm wrong with the politics. But we began chatting back and forth, and they bought the hype. They were convinced that, Trump had his moment in the sun but I've never seen it. This is like Barack Obama 2.0 on steroids. I got friends of mine who got real anxious and nervous and concerned about what Trump needs to do, what he doesn't need to do. How does he counter some of this enthusiasm and energy? And that is still in the process. I mean, as this podcast releases, that is still the case. I mean, there's no doubt that the Democrats have seized the energy. Now, I could revert to being a political hack and say the media has been mighty helpful. And I could be a political hack, and I don't think this is hackish. I think this is fair game. I think as somebody who gives his opinion on politics, you got to put on the table, how do Democrats feel? I'm not a Democrat, so damn it, I don't know. But how do Democrats feel having a nominee who has never received a single vote in a presidential primary, has not sat down with the media in 3 or 4 weeks, and is gaining momentum and traction? I mean, are you comfortable with that? I understand the Democrat wants to beat Trump. I get that. I mean, that's what this binary political world is about. Democrats want to beat Republicans. Republicans want to beat Democrats. At times it should be that way. At other times we allow that binary choice to cloud the judgment for what's better in America's fate and future. But she is gaining momentum by allowing someone other than herself to prove her to be a good candidate. Changing positions, not doing interviews, not ever having a single ballot cast in her favor. I know I sound like a hack, but fact check me. I mean, what have I said that's wrong? I mean, Pinocchio knows. Do whatever you got to do. Everything I'm saying is true and accurate. And I'm trying to establish how emotional the last, 60 days? Yeah, 60 days have been in the presidential election. It's not been about facts. It's not been about logic. It's not been about what's practical to believe or not. It's been the emotions, fight. Biden's look of distress at the debate. And now we've got this much younger, much more photogenic and charismatic candidate that we don't know. I mean, a lot of things she has said over the years, she'll have to be held accountable for. So when do I think we begin to put our emotions aside and become reasonable people? Never. I mean, I don't think we ever do that. I think we're incapable of putting all of our emotions aside and looking at the data. That's why you need me. I'm willing and able to do that. So I'll put my emotions aside and I'll give a brief critique or analysis of where I think we are today, mid-August. I mean, I don't know what day. I know what day we're doing this, but I don't know what day it'll edit and publish. But we're in mid-August. And, a couple of weeks before Labor Day, I still believe, as I've said over and over again, and this is not a repeat of a previous podcast, none of what we have paid attention to matters to the people who will decide this election. It matters to people who listen to conservative talk radio. It matters who believe Rachel Maddow walks on water. It matters who people who give a rat's ass what Joe and Mika say. It matters if you know who Brett Baer is and he just moved to Florida. I mean, you would be, not want to say junkies, but you would be more politically interested and inclined than the average American, or the American that I think will still decide who the next president of the United States is. We have subsets of the American electorate. Some move a little bit gently from election cycle to another. A candidate offers a certain personality or characteristic that this subset, white educated moms, non-educated blue-collar workers, highly educated voters with PhDs or advanced degrees. I mean, we've got so many subsets in America, and the pollsters and strategists really figure out how to message to these. But the one logical point I want to make, and the one thing that you've got to trust me on, is fight mattered. Biden being replaced by a much better candidate and gaining a lot of momentum matters. I'm not completely discounting or dismissing that, but don't chase the shiny object or the gimmick. And both parties have shiny objects and both parties have gimmicks. I mean, the Republicans have certain gimmicks and shiny objects. The Democrats have certain other shiny objects and gimmicks. It is still the working class vote in the Rust Belt that will determine who the next president of the United States is. And despite all the momentum, and I'm not trying to be a homer here. I mean, if I didn't feel this way, I wouldn't say it, because you don't have a lot of credibility if you're wrong more than you're right. But as we sit today, I still believe that the odds-on favorite is Donald Trump. I'm not Nate Silver. I don't have a supercomputer. I don't have a degree in political science. I don't have a degree in advanced mathematics or statistics. I'm driven by the gut and instinct and my willingness to study and better understand where American politics is, where it's been, and where it appears to be headed. And I still believe that the working class voters in Nevada, Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, at the end of the day, will side with Donald Trump. And it's not as much Trump as it is America First. This reorienting of the Republican Party from a neoconservative, I tell people a lot that, in my political life, I'm guilty of this. I mean, I was conditioned, trained, taught to worship at the altar of capitalism, to hate the Russians. I mean, that's pretty dumb on my part, but it's who, and I'm not the only one. I mean, I'm last year the baby boomer. We all fell for that company line of hating the Russians and worshiping at the altar of capitalism. And for years and years, that was kind of the modus operandi of the Republican Party. And it's transitioned into this America First that has a lot of growing up to do. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I've argued with many friends of mine that the one thing I like about J.D. Vance, he's smart. He's a very smart, methodical, thinking person. And the one thing America First lacks as it matures and develops and grows up and tries to sustain itself, I'm saying again, we'll see. I mean, the Chinese parent, we'll see. I don't have any idea if America First can sustain for the next 2 or 3 generations as the dominant ideology in the grand old party. But J.D. Vance adds that essential ingredient of electoral underpinning, a thoughtfulness that Trump doesn't bring to the table. Trump brings boldness, bravado, narcissism, bombast, irreverence, crassness. I mean, he brings all the other things, but he doesn't bring a lot of thoughtfulness. I'm not calling the guy dumb. You don't end up on the good side of $1 billion, a supermodel wife, and a private jet if you're dumb. Dumb people don't do that. So I'm not suggesting for a second that Trump is dumb, but he's not as interested in the intellectual underpinning it takes to think through policy decisions and really advance and sustain a political ideology. I think J.D. Vance does that. And I think when J.D. Vance, and I think he's doing it today, I think when J.D. Vance goes to Pennsylvania and talks to the most important people in this presidential election, the working class, he will resonate. His brand will resonate. There's a reason that Harris picked Tim Walz. They had to offset some of the J.D. I don't ever say this. He was the best guy. I mean, he's the most prepared guy to be president. I mean, we got to say that. Some believe that, some don't. Don't be foolish and believe that. I mean, it was to combat some base turnout. I mean, J.D. Vance is Trump's running mate because they believe he could best turn out the base they need to win the election. Harris picked Walz because she believes, or they believe, whoever makes her decisions, they believe that Walz can offset some of the advantage J.D. Vance brings to the game by being a hillbilly done good. Wrote the book Hillbilly Elegy. Went off to Yale, got well educated, crossed paths with the tech bros, made some money, introduced himself to politics, got elected to the Senate in Ohio, and has become a formidable and well-regarded senator. And now he is the VP candidate. But once again, you've got all these emotions, these hot emotions, and you go on Twitter and you read, a series of posts, and you'll say, oh, this is over in her favor. You read another page, and it's over in his favor. You listen to CNN, you think there's no way Trump wins. You listen to Fox, there's no way Trump loses. And I'm just asking you to not get caught up in that chatter. I mean, that's the chatter of politics. It's fun. I traffic in it. I do it with the best of them, 6 to 10 in the morning on the radio. But the one thing that hasn't changed a bit in this world is who will decide who the next president is. And it really comes down to, it's a couple of million people, but it'll be a swing of 30 or 40,000 votes in about 3 states, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. Now, why do I believe Trump wins? Because the number's 270. Emotions, math. The math is still 270. Somebody has to get 270 Electoral College votes to get elected president of the United States because of the mass migration. I tweeted about this today. The biggest political story in America today, and we've touched on this a lot, the biggest political story in America today is the mass migration of people from blue cities to red states. If Trump holds serve in 24, he gets 235 instead of 232. The post-2020 census moved 3 electoral college votes from blue states to red states. I'm talking about net. There was some grossing in there, but net, the Republican-leaning states picked up 3. So if Trump wins all the states he won in 2020, instead of getting 232, he gets 235. If you add Georgia, and I'll say this to the we'll see point, if Trump is not winning Georgia a month out, he's got problems. If he's having to play defense in Georgia, and by defense I'm talking about if they had allocated, let's hypothetically say, $10 million ad campaign in Georgia they thought would wrap it up. If all of a sudden there's a 25 or 30 or $40 million ad buy in the state of Georgia, that's an alarm bell. Be deeply concerned. They've got internal polling that shows them Georgia is not going their way. But if you take the 235, and I'm willing to say unless we get a big curveball, he wins Georgia, that gets to 251. That's 19 shy of 270. And he can get there simply by winning Pennsylvania's 19 electoral college votes. That gets him to 270. He can go to Arizona, Nevada, pick up the Omaha. Nebraska does this weird split electoral vote. They've got districts, and if you win a certain district, you get allocated a vote. But he can go that way. In other words, there are Wisconsin. I looked this morning. Other than Barack Obama, since 2000, the state of Wisconsin has been decided by less than 1 percentage point. I think the average, the Democrats have won a couple, the Republicans have won a couple, but I think the average margin of victory in Wisconsin, and I'm talking about Gore Bush, Kerry Bush, Trump Clinton, Trump Biden, every one of those campaigns in Wisconsin, the margin of victory was less than 1%. So it's not going to be any different. So Wisconsin's on the table. I'm less optimistic about Michigan. Things could change. I don't have any idea. But I believe Trump's path to 270. Sound like a homer, but I'm not. I promise I'm not trying to be a homer because I'm telling you that we'll see. I mean, I don't know that any of this comes to fruition, but there's an old saying in Pennsylvania politics that you've got Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and you got America in between. And that's Trump's fertile ground. I mean, that would be what you and I call flyover country. That's where the hayseeds like me live, and I think hayseeds like hillbillies. I think when J.D. Vance leaves Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania and goes out and talks to working class Rust Belt voters in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin, in Michigan, it resonates. That's why I think he has the advantage. That's not emotions. That's logic and math. More importantly, it's math. I get accused of being obsessed by the math. Well, I learned on county council 5 beats 4 every damn time. I don't care how good your idea is and how bad your opponent's is. If he can figure out a way to get 5 votes and you get 4, you go home a loser, he goes home a winner. So math is the most important thing. And the 3 electoral college votes that shifted from the blue states in 20 to the red states in 24 could be unbelievably impactful. I want to do a whole podcast and not too long from now about some of the trends that I'm reading about. I mean, we're having a huge, they called it a great sort. You know, we worry about America divorcing itself. We're kind of doing it now. I mean, the people that are frustrated living in blue cities or moving to red states, if you live around here, you know what I'm talking about. South Carolina, one of the fastest growing states in America. But I want to conclude by saying this simply. Logic, emotions. I mean, we all battle with that. Logically, this looks a certain way, but my emotions tell me something is fundamentally different. There was an emotional moment that it appeared Trump was unbeatable. Fight, fight, fight. There's now an emotional moment that it looks like she may be unbeatable, and she's got a lot of the organized forces on her team. It shouldn't surprise anybody to suggest that the liberal may be a bit media or a bit biased, a bit liberal bias. We know that to be the case, but I don't think they can win the election for her. And I think because Trump starts at 235, he wins Georgia to get to 251. There are varying ways he could get to 270. So that's kind of our election update. Once again, our intent is to eventually get to a more state, regional, and local-centric podcast / television show attempt, for whatever that's worth. But I think there's so much interest in this presidential election that we owed it to you to try and address some of the questions you may have and some of the opinions I do. Have a good day.